Coming up, madness at the US trials. A 16-year-old runs 142.2 for 800 meters. What's next? And the Diamond League is going to restart without one of its biggest stars. Up next.
Rohde's bearing down on top of Eugene. Eugene digs deep and he's got no more. And Andrew Lloyd wins it again. Récupéré ensuite chez lui au Maroc à Ifrane.
À la Web, il est parti à la Web, il a tenté le coup du siècle là.
Oui,
surprendre tout le monde. Au 800.
Final of the men's 10,000 meters in
Lots of ball out. Oh, it looks to be. Who else is in the race? The wave is there. The confidence is there.
All right, recording this Friday, August the 8th. It's not Friday, August the 8th, where you are, Shane Rohde, over in the land of the long white cloud, New Zealand. How you doing, pal?
I'm good, mate. It's early here. It's, what is it, 7:23 a.m. on Saturday. We're first in the world at something. Time.
Well, yeah, awesome. Good to see you again. And hey, this is the first time we're actually going to do one of these. For all the viewers out there, we've been doing a few little practice ones of these last couple of weeks just to make sure that we don't sound like complete idiots. And this is the first one that we're actually going to release to be consumed. How you feeling?
I doubt that. I doubt that when we pass away, they're going to sort of find the unreleased B-sides and they're going to be of any interest to anyone. But
hey, have we secured sponsorship yet?
I'm working on the team at Lateral Lawyers, but I've got to talk to the co-director. He's currently in Europe, actually, which is maybe
we're still dealing with Deca.
We're a bit like GST. We're still in limbo.
There's
a promise of money to come.
All right, awesome. Hey, so mate, what a time to be following track and field. So many interesting topics. Obviously, we had the US trials here last week, where I was down for a couple of days, and some incredible performances there. And then we're going to touch on later the Diamond League starting up again with some pretty huge news. But US trials, just going through some of the results. Incredible as always. The US team is the most difficult to make. And I think, hey, just in terms of sort of other events, maybe not like the key events that we're going to focus on, we had the 100 meters were excellent. 9.78 to win the US 800 meters, 10.65 on the women's side. That was awesome. Anything else jump off the page to you?
What was the fourth place getter's time on the men's? It was something ludicrous, wasn't it? 9.84?
9.84 for Travion Bromell. Like,
I think I read on Let's Run It would have made I think every Olympic podium except maybe one or two.
Yeah. Just an incredible standard. I was there for that night, and like amazing weather conditions, and the guys just bought it, and the ladies too. In fact, the ladies even more impressive with Jefferson Woodall 10.65. She's just in incredible shape. The 200s, a bit of an incident there towards the end. Good for the sport or not? Bit of I guess you could say track spice between Noah Lyles and Kenny Bednarek.
Was there? I'm not such an insider as you are, Jason. Was there beef, so to speak, as my stepson would say? Was there beef prior to that? I mean, was the? Yeah.
I honestly don't know. I heard that there was some kind of Instagram account, like a covert Instagram account that was generating something. I don't know.
Because if there wasn't, then it looked like an overreach, or like it looked a little bit like Noah Lyles was out of line, how long he stared him down. And I thought it was a little bit silly, given he gave him the kind of almost sort of Lance Armstrong, Jan Ulrich, Alpe d'Huez 2001 kind of the old stare down. But he only got past him in the last few meters. It's not like he smashed him. I mean,
no.
Just about had it. So I don't know. I don't know enough about it, but it was, you know what? It was good in the sense that it was interesting. And then the old standoff on the track afterwards, just kind of bringing back a bit of biff, as they say, from the Australasian, the rugby league, the NRL, a bit of like sort of rather than these robotic guys who just go out and compete and they say all the right things from their media company. It was a bit of biffo brought back into the sport, so to speak. It was quite good.
Yeah. Elsewhere, Sydney McLaughlin-Ravoni, just under 49 for the 400 meters, but misses the US record again. I mean, not too much to discuss there. I think nothing from you.
Juliet Whittaker's sister, and that's pretty crazy. We talked about the Hoes last week, but I'd never heard of her till this year. I thought, maybe I knew she had a sister in the 4x4 squad or just outside the squad. That's pretty crazy. She's won a few diamond leagues this year, and she's very good. So she got second, didn't she? I know she was winning some diamond leagues.
And I was there for her breakout race at NCAA Indoors, where she ran in the mid 49s and just looked superb. So, yeah, I mean, whereas Juliet Whittaker has had a few struggles this season, her sister Isabel has really come on and looks to be like a legit global contender for Tokyo, I think. We just, between you and I, we discussed the 10Ks here last week, kind of technically off air. Not outstanding races. Probably the big story was Infeld on a massive comeback, and I think we were in agreement. We were both really happy for her. But as always at the US trials, like the best events, and I know that we're a little bit biased because of our history, but the best events are the 8s, the 15, and the 5Ks. So should we dive into just a few
let's get into the good stuff. We've just had some sort of mediocre, sort of lukewarm hors d'oeuvres. Now the sort of steaming mains are arriving on our table.
And I think that's also interesting because there's a couple of topics that I know you've got one that you really want to discuss and one from my side as well that are kind of all intrinsically linked to some of the events that happened over those distances. So women's 800 meters, probably before the race, I think you and I agreed that it was probably going to be a more end-to-end competitive race than the men's 8, and that actually turned out to be the case. And I know that you're particularly impressed with the winner of that 800. What did you think?
Rohde Willis, I mean, she's world junior champion, and I'm impressed for reasons that might not be immediately apparent. I mean, running form is, I would say, okay. I wouldn't say it's aesthetically easy on the eye, but she's obviously an intelligent woman. She's at Stanford. She's been public about some mental health struggles, which I, for one, can relate to in my life. And she looks like she is a very together athlete. So she may not be the most talented in terms of how she moves, but the way she positions herself, her tenacity. I was looking her up the other day before we did this podcast. She's been great since she was like 13 or 14, running, I think, 203, or I may be wrong on that, 204 when she was very young. So, I think she's an example of all the young ones out there, that's someone who's stuck at the sport, hasn't just had it all go her way, has achieved a lot, and now she's the US senior women's champion. When I'd argue some of those other women out there, Michaela Rose springs to mind, are probably more talented.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Willis, one of the things that really jumps off the page is, I think you nailed it there. Just like her savviness out on the track, it's very I'd say indicative of athletes that come through the NCAA system. Like very, very good tactically. They're always in good spots. Centro was a classic guy. Obviously Centro was very talented, but didn't really have that top end kind of performance of some of his peers. He never ran under 330, but was just always in the right place at the right time. And she looks like she's got that.
Yeah, and both products of Stanford. Juliet Whittaker, I mean, thus far this year, Rohde Willis's season's been a carbon copy of Juliet Whittaker's last year. Won NCAA, made the US team, and Juliet Whittaker got, was it 7th in the final last year in the Olympics? So neither of them, I would think, capable of running 155 like Athing Mu or Archie Wilson, but time will tell. But both of them are, I believe, getting the most out of themselves, and it's great to watch. It's cool. It gives hope to all those people out there that are not top end talent. It shows there's still room in the sport for people who are able to look at everything holistically and put it all together.
Hey, so also in that particular race, I know that talking to you before these finals last week, you had a pretty, I wouldn't say it was a super hot take about somebody in that race that ended up doing very well, but you had a pretty good prediction on Maggie Congdon there. You were impressed with what you saw in the prelims, right?
Yeah, I'm a sucker for good running form, and I watched her, I believe, 1 or 2 years ago in some NCAA race, and I remember she didn't win. She may not even have got podium, but her running form is just superb, and she again looks like she's done everything right. She's out of NAU, and I looked her up. Apparently, she'd run 53.400, which is, so Heather McLean was also a pretty good but not amazing 400-meter runner, and obviously they're building aerobic threshold and anaerobic threshold on top of good running mechanics, presumably well taught as sprinters. And yeah, I thought she was a hot take for when some of these other perhaps more talented or more developed women have come unstuck. I thought she would have been someone who was able to put it together on the day, and she did.
Yeah. So yeah, pretty awesome race in the women's 800. In the 1500, I don't think a lot of stories there. Nikki Hiltz comes through to win, I think, 7th title across outdoors and indoors. Nikki, obviously the class at the moment of American women's 1500 meter running. And also on the placings there, I don't think anything that was overly shocking. The 5K though, how about that one? With everybody's favorite, Shelbs Houlihan comes through. She's back on the team. I mean, kind of incredible to think, again, after such a long layoff, that she could do that. I mean, she didn't have very good results sort of in the middle part of the season, but I think just watching that race, I don't know what you thought. It just seemed like with a lap to go that it was going to happen.
Oh, definitely. I mean,
yeah.
We're not going to get into whether we think she was doing anything or not, but
yeah,
she's tough.
Yeah.
She's hung in there all that time without any reward, and obviously went it's been to hell and back. And yeah, you have to hand it to her on the day for how she performed. I was watching her during the last, I think I only watched the last 3 or 4 laps. I sort of fast forwarded through on my USA TF subscription. She's got that sort of Jakob, the sort of slight forward lean, and she's very fluent in her style, and she's definitely got the ability to come off that pace. So all those, not to be derogatory about the other woman in that race, but they're kind of fodder for someone like her who has run 354, ex-American record holder over the 1500, and is tough as nails. So you combine the toughness with the ability. It's kind of a predictable result, really. I sort of thought 3-4 laps to go, she's going to win this and do it kind of at a canter, and she did.
Yeah, so flipping across to the men's side, and I guess we can work backwards because I think that's probably an order of potential interest here. The men's 5K was actually pretty similar to that women's 5K. That was just a bizarre race for me to see those guys, in particular Grant Fisher, Nico Young, just let the pace dawdle for so long, which just really appeared to play into the hands of Cole Hocker. After winning that race, a little bit of chatter around certain websites and message boards that Cole Hocker could be a potential dark horse to actually win at the World Championships because he, as the US champion, and beating the guys that he did. Anything jump out at you in that race there? What did you think of the tactics of Fisher? What did you think of the tactics of Young? Why would they not force that pace earlier? And is Hocker a legitimate threat in Tokyo?
I've been thinking about that a little bit. I don't know if I entirely agree that their tactics were bad, because if they're running 12, if those guys are running 12, what's Fisher run? 12:44.
Yeah, 12.
Young's run what? 12:45. 12:45.
Blank's 48.
And as we often say to each other, the ability to kick at the end, a bit like old Beatrice at the end of Beatrice at the end of the. Can you hear that or?
Yeah. What is it?
Just 1 second, Rose. I can't. It's disrupting the. I can't hear because of the. Sorry. Sorry. Where were we?
We're men's 5K.
Men's 5K.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got the ability of people to kick when they're off a certain pace is. We believe we talked about Chibet versus Kipyego, and I remember your quote was, "Well, that settles the speed versus strength thing forever then, because there's no feasible way that Faith should have lost that race based on the convention that speed wins at the end." So if you look at that, I don't think that those guys necessarily botched their tactics, because they're still pretty quick, both those guys, over the mile, and they would have backed themselves to outsprint him. What I think it more suggests is he is actually, contrary to his 1500 result, I think he's actually progressing quite well, because it may suggest he's not too sharp at the moment, because it's a long way still to Worlds, and wasn't able to kick like those guys who are race sharp and have been racing all year. Like Ethan Strand, and the other guy, we'll get to him in a moment.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's got any chance for Worlds in the 5K. I think that's a myth, but I still think that it shows he possibly is doing better than we had thought in the 1500.
Yeah, I mean, I would slightly disagree, because I felt that Fisher and Young and even Blanks made a pretty big mistake. So I think, there's a point at which a speed guy like Hocker, but he's also very strong. He's run under 13 minutes. He's run 12:57 and obviously 7:23 for 3K. So he's very, very tough. But it's not the same level of strength as those guys have run sub 12:50, right? I just think, when the race goes that slow through 3K, because it was 8:21 through 3K. So clearly that doesn't hurt anyone in that field, really. And it certainly doesn't hurt Hocker. It certainly doesn't hurt Fisher, Young, or Blanks. But what surprised me is that for that next mile, the guys around the next mile, or they were happy to let it go 4:12. And I went back and I looked at what happened in Paris, because it was a similar kind of race in terms of its structure, which is 8:17 through 3K. But the next mile, or the next 4 laps, was 4:02, right? And then Jakob was obviously able to run 53.3 off that off that kind of pace, and Hocker was able to run 50, sub 52. I guess I was just surprised, and I heard afterwards Grant Fisher say that he wanted to actually drive the pace from a K out, but he was boxed. I mean, an American final with his level of ability, I guess, you got to take for his word. I went back and I had a look at sort of his positioning in the last sort of 3 laps to a mile, and I felt there was plenty of opportunities where if he really was committed to driving that pace, he could have got out and done so. I then heard a quote from Blanks' coach that Blanks was basically waiting on Fisher to make the move so he could follow him. I never like hearing that, relying on somebody else to execute your race strategy. And the same for Nico Young. Maybe those guys were a little bit tired after the 10K, but then again, Hocker had run 2 rounds of the 1500, including a very competitive final. I think maybe they were just a little bit complacent. And then once again, in the last 300 meters, there were 3 occasions where just almost inexplicably gaps opened up on the inside for Cole Hocker to come flying through. He came flying through on the inside of Dylan Jacobs with about 200 to go. No reason why Jacobs would move out. And then there was a moment with about 110 to go where he had to go around Tier, and Tier kind of moved out to force somebody else wide. The gap opens up there. So everything kind of aligned for him. I wouldn't say he was lucky, but he capitalized on his savviness and his patience. But hey, I mean, you got to hand it to him, and he got it done on the day.
I still think it shows he's strong though, because we've seen so many times we've seen someone in that spot in a race that's slow like that, an over distance race that's slow like that, and you're thinking here comes the big kick, and they just fade. I actually thought he was going to fade. I was starting to think with like 500-600 to go, he's not as good this year, and this reveals that, and then he just
he when that kind of move came towards the bell and he dropped back, I actually thought, oh, he's just cooked. And
because didn't he get smoked in the 5K US trials last year after winning?
Yeah.
15? Yeah.
There was a bit of chatter about him sort of wanting to do the double in Paris. He got smoked, and then of course he ran that 5K earlier the year in Stockholm, and that didn't really work out for him as good as I'd hoped, or as he would have hoped. And yeah, but hey, I think just when the race gets that slow, and I think I would link that back to the women's 800, because one athlete we didn't really talk about there was Addison Wiley, who the US leader, who I think made a series of massive mistakes in that 800 meters in not getting to the front and forcing the pace in a slow race. And she paid for it in a big way. And I think at the end of the day, Young and Fisher, not so much Fisher, he still got through comfortably, but Nico Young was really lucky to hold off Drew Hunter there for that.
I mean, I think with Hocker as well, perhaps in the same way that our Kiwi studs in the 1500, John Walker and Nick Willis, always had, it appeared, aspirations to run well over 5,000, perhaps even sort of a bit like when you're in a job and you go, I could do this other job later. But perhaps it's, I definitely don't want to say delusional, but perhaps it's not reality that they could compete, but maybe the idea that they could one day, or it's a backup event, is good in the sense that it feeds so much into the modern paradigm of how to prepare for the 1500, is that they're always going in these 5Ks, and it's all been quite similar. They've all had the odd very good performance, but then on the wrong day, they just can blow up and be like 100 meters back. It seems a consistent pattern.
Yeah. So anything else on that 5K, or should we dive into the to really the two big ones that really
let's do
excite us? Okay. So, we did our little we did our little test podcast last week, and it literally finished an hour before the men's 1500. And at the time I thought it was kind of stupid we did that, because we could have had an amazing chat about what happened in that race. But then I realized then later that it was actually a positive thing, because we get to talk about it now. So men's 1500, the big story here is obviously Jared Naguse, who looked like he was on the cusp of, and he still is. I mean, he's still an incredible runner, but it looked like he'd made that leap last year by getting on the podium in Paris, running that incredible time. He won the Diamond League in Zurich. He set world indoor record in the mile earlier this year, and kind of looked like he was on the cusp of being like one of those just day in, day out consistent guys that's always going to make a team, that had plenty of leeway if he wasn't maybe, completely on his game. A little bit how Hocker was in that race, right? Hocker wasn't quite on his game, but he was still good enough to make it. And Jared did not make the team and ended up even in 5th place. Same with Kessler. And I think last week I said to you that my feeling was that Hobbs wasn't quite in the same form as he was a year ago at the US trials, where he obviously ran really well, had back-to-back 143 races in the 800 semis and final. So the team is going to be Jonah Koech, the Kenyan turned American, who is he won the Diamond League earlier in Rabat this year. Ethan Strand and Hocker. Thoughts?
I mean, so starting with the order you addressed it, Naguse has had history though going off the ball. I think his last year at Notre Dame, he, after setting the NCAA record in either the 15 or the 3 the year earlier, remember he was just kind of flunked out, and he got smoked at the NCAAs, I believe, that year after being a record holder. Didn't either make the final or got like 12th in the 3K or something like that. And then he missed that team, didn't he? Or I think he did. I think so. He has history to be a little bit,
Yeah.
He, more worrying though, for him is I don't believe it looked like a bad race. He just looked tired, and he didn't. Yeah, he just didn't inspire a view that it was an off day. He just looked kind of bedraggled to me in the over the whole race. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I felt the same way, and that's going to kind of segue into a topic I'm going to touch on in a minute or so. I felt that honestly, after 800 meters of that final, they had this camera shot down the back straight, and I just looked at him, and I just felt, I'm like, he doesn't look good today, right? Like you said, what was the word you said? Bedraggled.
Bedraggled.
I like that word. He did, and it was only 800 meters in, and the 800 meter split wasn't even that fast. I think it was reasonably fast. It was in the high 154s, but I just didn't feel like he looked very energetic or didn't look like he had that pep. And I've got some really interesting stats and numbers that we can talk about, like I said, in a second, with respect to just how much racing he's doing, with how it all ties into the training philosophy. But hey, it's a pretty big hit for him, and obviously now the only way for him to qualify for the World Champs is to actually win the Diamond League, which, tying into another topic we have now, might be a little bit easier, but still incredibly tough. He's now going to have to go race Silesia in the 1500 and then Brussels in the 1500, do quite well there, and then still have to find enough energy to go to the World Champs and perform all this after a season which started at basically the beginning of February and has almost gone non-stop. So it's a really, really tough ask. Do you see any way that he's going to actually come through that kind of gauntlet and make it to Tokyo?
Well, the smart man, he says no, but stranger things have happened. I mean, he's obviously outrageously talented. So, yeah, I don't know. Look, two things, right? It's just take the obvious, but it depends what sort of aerobic shape he's actually in. Was that misleading, as in he looked, as I said, bedraggled? Or was he just tired? Or did he have something going on in his life that day or that week? Who knows? And then the other thing is desire. Like, does he really care? Like, is he, of course he cares, but is he like at home now, literally crying into his cup of tea going, oh my God, well, maybe not crying, but going, oh my God, like this riles me and I'm going to do this. Then if those two were yes, then conceivably he could make the team.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I guess the other, I don't know how much of a story Jonah Koech is making the team. I don't think a lot of people picked him just because, number one, Hocker and Nagoose appeared to be sort of at that 1A tier ahead of everybody else. My pick, I said this last week, was actually Ethan Strand to get that third spot. I thought he would get it ahead of Kessler. I didn't think Koech was going to be a factor at all. But, another world-class performance from him to run low 330.12 or 17 with a really big close in the final 100. All of this after not racing for a very long time, hamstring concerns for him. You got anything on Koech?
Oh, there's just not a lot of data out there. It's like the Phantom. He kind of just turned up and won. That's sort of how. Easy.
And
Strand's a more interesting topic.
Yeah.
I watched that NCAA and I rewound it. Actually showed my partner. I said, "Oh my God!" Like how he got second in that was a modern day miracle. It was the equivalent of walking on water. Where he came from, and I thought, man, when he ran, but I thought it might be another Nathan Green situation where against peers they're able to kick off the pace and do everything right tactically to win races, but it wasn't a Nathan Green situation. It was after watching that, is it the B mile at the pre?
Yeah.
And he ran like 3:48 and he kind of did it on his ear.
Yeah.
And I thought then, man, this guy's a real shot to make the team. And he's awesome. He's got that kind of almost Hockerish kick and he's run 7:30 for 3K?
Yeah.
Amazing guy.
Yeah, it's another guy who seemingly off the curve in that final 100, like you said, similar to Hocker. As we know, we've just seen guys over the years that can just like spin the wheels in the final 100, right? Like even under a lot of stress and strain, they can just like sprint hard. And I think a lot of people didn't really believe in him so much. He was kind of an underground pick to make the team, but a lot of people were concerned by what happened in that NCAA race. And they were like, well, if he can't win even a 3:44 NCAA race or whatever it was, even slower, right? 347. It was insanely slow. No, it was 344, I think. But a lot of people are like, well, if he can't win that race, how's he going to go to the trials in a potential low 330 race and do the same? But I actually totally disagreed. I'm like, that is the kind of race that guy needs. If it's not super hot that it doesn't destroy him in the first 1200, he is like the absolute premium candidate to be able to finish really, really fast in like a low 330 race. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. But also, it's not like when we were growing up, and for the listeners out there of more our vintage than you young ones, like your NCAA, if you won the NCAA, it didn't really mean jack shit in terms of how that transpired or transposed into performance on the global stage. But look at it now, like 2 out of the last 3 medalists in the Olympics were the NCAA winners, and like got guys like Gary Martin, Nathan Green, all in the US final in a really, really tough low 330s final. So I think the fact he didn't win. Nathan Green's a fierce competitor. He's that sort of guy that, if it was in basketball terms, would be great and pick up basketball on one-on-one. Does he have the high-end aerobic capacity to run fast? We're not so sure about that. But in terms of a tenacious competitor who is a winner, is able to win races, it was still a really great run from Ethan Strand that day. Those of us have actually, Jason ran at the world level, I ran at the domestic level. If you've actually raced over these events, you can know that the difference in winning and getting second on a given day, it's the effect in terms of the public perception may be drastic, winner versus say runner up and all that nonsense around second to first loser. But in terms of actual just performance and percentage terms, he was great in that NCAA race.
Yeah. All right. And so moving on to the event, which was easily the most incredible of the weekend, I think, for a number of reasons. Like 3 massive stories to come out of the men's 800. And I would rank them in this order. Tell me if you disagree. Number 1, Josh Hoey, the American leader, the world indoor champion. He ran twice under 143 this year coming in. Was not able to make the team. Faded badly, took it out incredibly fast. It was low 24, 49.3 at the bell. Big disappointment for Josh. Second story, and I don't even know how to rank these ones accurately. Is the next story on the list in terms of ascending order? Is it Donovan Brazier coming back after injury to not only win the US title, he's going to the Worlds again, but he also ran a PR to shunt him up to maybe 14th or 15th on the all-time list? Or is it a 16-year-old high school kid running 142.28 with a 51.7 last lap to make the team? Just incredible. Rank those stories, Deo. What is going on? Honestly, what is going on?
It has to be the 16-year-old, and I'd say it's even over the Hoey story. That's like a historically anomalous performance, even in these crazy times we're witnessing at the moment. I looked it up. I think he's the 18th fastest performer in history over 800 meters. He's 16.
Yeah. And some of those guys that he has now overtaken on that all-time list include guys from our, like, legendary guys from sort of our youth. Andre Bucher, Yuri Borzakowski, Johnny Gray, Ezekiel Sepeng, like all left in the dust. I think, we can. Let's get back to Lupton House, because that whole scenario needs a little bit more analysis. But let's just talk quickly about Brazier. I know you were really stoked with Donovan after everything he's gone through to show up the way he did, and just what an incredible performance.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this. I think that in the 800 particularly, it's that very rare combination of aerobic and anaerobic ability. So in the distances, I think you can, the Shelby Hurlin situation when you're out of it for quite a while, but because you're tapping into predominantly an aerobic system, when you're older, it's age isn't really a prohibitor to actually continuing to operate at a very high level. Because in the 800, the window, because you need so much speed and speed strength and physical strength in that sort of that youthful sort of those hormones, it seems to be like a 3 to 5 year window max to perform the 800 at a really high level. So his title was 2019.
Yeah.
He probably would have won the Olympics, or at least would have been,
Right there,
the favorite at 2020. Things didn't go his way, and to come back 5 years after that, so 6 years after the title, and I read an article that he'd run for a total of like a couple of months a year for 23 and 24. Yeah, it's a phenomenal story.
Yeah.
It's cool to watch. It's cool.
Yeah.
It was like one of those heartwarming moments in track, and there's a lot to not love about some of the, how do I put it, more cynical sort of aspects of track these days, but that was like a cool story to see him do that.
Yeah, and I think I told you this before. I was there at the trials that year when he came out and raced with what essentially was a broken foot. And I didn't really know. I still don't really know Donovan at all. Like, I've seen him around a few meets and everything, and seems like a nice guy. But I think I mentioned to you at the time, I was just so impressed with. He went out there. He ran. He was clearly like laboring in that second lap, and then it was stunning when in the final 150 of that race, he just the body just gave up, and also the mind, because I think there's like when you're racing injured, and I'm sure you've been through this as well, like I have too, right? It's not just a physical game of holding on; it's also a mental game. Like you're just willing yourself like through the pain, holding on.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just a breaking point where when you mentally lose it, you're like, I just can't do this. Like, it is incredible how the body just is like, nah, and it just completely shuts down. And that's what happened to him in that race. I think I said to you, one thing that really impressed me about him is that he came across the line and he didn't make a big song and dance, and he just like kept his head down and he didn't say anything at all, and just left the track with such grace. And then it was really heartbreaking to hear that he'd basically, as he'd broken his foot a couple of days later, was in a cast. So I really am happy for Donovan in this particular instance, and this is one of the great comeback stories, I think, and certainly like
it was
recently. Yeah,
it was one of the great comeback stories, and to see that look of pure elation on his face, and he's normally a pretty reserved, classy character, and I wouldn't say he was over the top, far from it, but you could see that pure elation, that sort of primordial scream he let out, and then hugging his partner or wife. It was cool to watch. It meant the same to him as those of us watching who thought, man, that's a sort of spine tingling moment. It was real cool.
So that leads us on to Cooper Lichtenhouse, 16 years old, 142.28. I think, man, I mean, it's a US under 18 and world under 18 record. And I know that you were around as a young athlete when the guy sitting in this seat speaking broke the New Zealand under 18 record back in 1998. Do you remember the time? You're a pretty good stats guy.
151.49.
151.49. Back in 1998, I was able to break the New Zealand under 18 record, held at the time by Alan Meaty Bunce. And it is hard to believe that I mean, like, dude, do you know how far back that is on the track from 142.28? I did the rough math on it. It's about 70 meters down the track. Like, it's just a different planet. Like, unbelievable. It's a time that's even still well under our national senior record. It's under the national record of a number of countries. I mean, how is that possible? And what does the progression look like for the rest of Cooper Lichtenhouse's teams? Because, like, I think, like, for us, when we were sort of that age, if you were progressing at about a second per year, which is kind of like what I think I roughly did, and I'm sure you probably did too, from 16, 17, 18, 19. If Cooper Lichtenhouse does that, right, he's going to be the world record holder by the time he's 18, and by the time he's 20, he's going to have run, not just smash through that 100-second barrier, he's going to smash through the 99-second barrier, which obviously is, I wouldn't say obviously, but most likely is not going to happen. But what do you think is going to happen in the next 3 or 4 years with this guy? How much faster can he possibly go?
I think that the normal playbook goes out the window of someone like this. I mean, yeah. I mean, the good news for Cooper Lichtenhouse is if he can even just maintain this level, he's world class already. He's got a 10-year career, make a bunch of money, and hopefully win some medals and maybe go for a record. I mean, it's wild.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something in the water, though. I mean, in terms of, and I don't mean that in a
I got you.
It's just I'm not trying to create an innuendo in that. It's something in the water in the sense that everything is just those guys, sort of no names running 3:27 and 1500, and it feels like we look at these performances and we go, "Wow, this kid at this age ran this," or they've got the Laroses, and I think maybe that Jakob was perhaps the forerunner of this, or maybe it's because we had lockdown and kids, it upset their world. It took them away from their routine, their creature comforts. Maybe running was, who knows? I'm just absolutely like putting my finger in the air and seeing the way.
Yeah.
You know? But like, there's something going on, and they're elevated. I don't think it's just, obviously it's not wave lights for these kids coming through. They don't have wave lights, spikes a little bit, but I think it's just the human propensity for progression and the mentality. Like when Bannister broke 4, and then all of a sudden it couldn't be done, and then all of a sudden, scores of people were breaking 4. It's that human progression, and that is like admittedly still an outlier in that context, but he's like the poster boy for this new era of just supercharged performances across the board.
Yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. I think it's just, when you want to, we talked last week about sort of one of the mailbag questions was what are the biggest sort of performance enhancers right now in the sport? And, obviously at the pro level, you've got wave light, you've got, bicarb, you've got spikes, et cetera. Now, not all the high school kids have access to that. But to your point, what they do is they sit down and they watch these guys. And what actually happens is as that top level sort of jumps to a new plateau, everything below it gets pulled up. Like just your like kind of your expectation level of your aspiration level, just it goes up with it. So, back in our day, the thought of, high school kids running sub 4 for a mile was absolutely absurd. Now we've got a 16-year-old in New Zealand, or even take that back. That will upset someone. We had a 15-year-old. Oh, was he 15 or 16, Sam, when he broke the 4 for the mile?
Maybe 15.
Yeah. Either way, phenomenal times, phenomenal performances. Yeah. He was definitely 15 when he won the New Zealand 3,000 meters in 7:56. So, and even that was a time where in our youth was just an incredible mark. So, I mean,
for a senior,
for a senior, exactly. So, I mean, it's hard. It's obviously you're right. Lichtenhouse is not going to progress the way that other youth athletes have traditionally in the past. I tell you what though, man, like it's going to be really interesting for him in this respect. Like, there's something about chasing a PR and achieving it that's really holistically motivating. It's such a cool thing, right? Like, what that's like. I know what that's like.
100%.
And it's even
you always
cooler.
get the most kicks from the big gains as well.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, I'm trying to break 155 today, and then you go and you run like 152.9, which can happen at that level. It's kind of
that actually happened to me. My best was from school, and I had a few crappy years from being a kid. Yeah, and then I ran 152.4 in Wellington, and it was like such a dopamine rush when I got the result. It was like, whoa, this is cool. That hard work,
That was the same for me at Nationals back in '97 in Christchurch. I was only a 155 kid, and then I was able to come through in that my first year as a senior boy at national schools and run 152. And like as you said, you sort of finish the race, and somebody runs up to you, or you hear a time. Shit, it's just like incredible. And it's not that I feel bad for Cooper Lichtenhouse because I don't. Because he's going to make a ton of money, and he's already one of the best 800-meter runners in history.
Yes.
But it's just going to be really interesting over the next sort of 3 to 4 years how he can handle almost like these gains that he's going to have are not going to be massive. Like it's not going to be 1 or 2 second like chunks falling off his 800 PR unless we are on the cusp of something like truly absurd. It's going to be more like battling extremely hard to take 0.2 of a second off here, maybe 1/10 of a second off there, and how he's going to deal with that as a young athlete coming through.
Jim Ryan made some good comments saying it's all about how he modulates or is able to deal with his internal versus external expectations, and can he not let the media and I was thinking the other day about Sydney McLaughlin, how people said she looks quite weighed down all the time and quite serious, but I was thinking about it, like I was explaining to my partner who she is and her story. That's a huge weight of expectation that Sydney McLaughlin's carried since she was probably 12 or 13 to be the next big track star, and she's done it with a plume, really, if you think about it. All that pressure she's had on her shoulders is going to be the same for this kid, particularly with the increased attention on track compared to historical times at the moment. So he's going to have to be not only something physically special, but also mentally special, and he's going to have really good people around him in terms of managing his expectations, as you said. And but if you're going to be a big star like that, these big stars in any pursuit in life, he's going to have to be special across the board. He's going to have to, those normal rules of like you get the big PB and that spurs you on. It's a more holistic appreciation for, he's going to have a more holistic appreciation, a more enlightened appreciation of his specialness and how that's managed to elevate him to the next level. Sounds a very, what's he going to Mars? But to stay where he is at the moment.
Hey, so in wrapping this up, I think this kind of segues us nicely onto this next topic. This is one thing I wanted to run by you, see what your thoughts were. Obviously, the two biggest casualties coming out of US were Rohde and Neguse, right? And Neguse was technically, he was the world. He was the US leader in both the 1500 and the mile. He was the US leader by proxy of what he went through the 1500 meters on route at Prefontaine, right, which was, I believe, slightly quicker than Coach in Rabat. And Rohde obviously was the US leader going in. And both those guys just looked like really.
Isn't he the third? Isn't Yared the third fastest miler in history? Is that right? Third or fourth?
He is the fourth. So we have El Garouge, we have Nien, and then Jakob, and then Yared.
He's the fourth fastest miler in history.
Fourth fastest mile in history, and so
it's not like that was a fluke either. He's run 3:27 as well. He's won Diamond Leagues. He's an Olympic medalist. Yeah,
and he ran 3:46.60 indoors and 3:47 indoors. But hey man, I did a little bit of research on this because I was like, man, Rohde and Neguse seem to have been running extremely well or at a very high level for a very long time. And just
this year?
This year, sorry, I say long time. I mean, since the start of the season. And so what I did is I went back and I had a look and I compared Wilson Kipketer, right, and Hicham El Garouge, their 1997 seasons versus the seasons of both Rohde and Neguse in this year, 2025. Listen to this. It's really, really interesting. So 1997, right, Wilson Kipketer, his indoor season was 3 days long, right? He went to the World Indoors and he only ran the World Indoors. That was his entire season. I got a good story about this too. But he ran 1:43.96 in the heats. He ran 1:48.49 in the semifinal, and of course that historic 1:42.67 in the final. Now, as you know, I was able to sit down with Kipketer at the Olympics in 2004. I remember asking about this. I said, "Hey, what was the deal with that 1997 indoor season? Like, were you what was the preparation like, et cetera, et cetera?" He told me that all he wanted to do was basically show to his coach that that training was going well. That's basically how he put it. So he said there was no real impetus on running indoors. And of course, when you look back at the way that that the training philosophy for the events was back in that late 90s, we had real distinct periodization between like an aerobic base phase where the guys hardly touched spikes. They, if they did stride outs even once a week, on the grass or on the road or something, it was very rare. as opposed to the way that the guys do things now, where they're always sort of only a week, 10 days away from almost their best shape, right? Like just total different philosophy. Talk about that in a second. But Rohde this year, his indoor season, I looked this up, was 65 days long, right? He ran 214.5 for a K. He ran 333.6 for 1500. He ran 143.90, 143.24, and then he had the program at the World Indoors, which he won. So he ran 8 indoor races over the course of 65 days at the start of this. This is opposed to Wilson Kipketer, who ran 3 races over 3 days back in 1997. And so prior to World Champs in that year, right, Kipketer, he ran 9 races, including indoors. And Josh Rohde, prior to the trials final this year, has already run 18 races. Like, that's just
including indoor and out.
Including indoor and out. So he's run twice as much as probably, well, easily one of the Mount Rushmore 800-meter runners in history, right? And here's another interesting one for you here. This is LG versus Negose, right? So LG back in 97 had a slightly longer indoor season, right? He ran 331.1 for 15. He ran a 348.4 mile, and then he ran 2 races at the World Indoors. So he ran 4 races indoors over 34 days. And Negose's indoor campaign was only 28 days long. It was only 2 races, but he ran 346.6 for the mile and 347.2. So he's about 2 seconds faster than LG over the mile. But here's the big difference, right? After the World Indoors, and I know I'm going on, but I'm getting to my point here. After the World Indoors, Algarouge, he ran the World Final on the 8th of March. His next race was the 31st of May. That was an 84-day gap between the end of World Indoors and kind of his first outdoor race. So post Yared Negose's 347 mile that he ran in Boston on the 2nd of March, his next race was the 5th of April. That's 34 days. So 50 days less recovery, time to go away and train to regroup. And included this workout that he did on the 30th of March. I don't know if you saw this one.
I heard about that.
Yeah, he ran 4 times a K, right, in about 3 minutes. So sort of thresholdy sort of pace, right? Or maybe a little bit slower, but still decent effort. Then he ran a 128.600. 56.3 for a 4, 40.8 for a 300, 26.9 for a 200, then 51.1 for 400. So I think just the point is like, I look back at the way that the guys used to, structure their seasons in the past. And I look at the way that the guys are structuring their seasons now, in particular, the case of these 2 guys who just look really tired. And I know some people might turn around and say, well, Rohde led the race out in 49.3, and that's not a big deal. Like if he hadn't done that, if he'd run a bit slower, he would have been fine. And the same with Negose. But my question to you is, like, when I give you those stats, just for those seasons, like, has this sort of change in training philosophy again that we touched on earlier, where guys just seem to they want to be close to their peak shape almost all year round now versus the ways of the past, right? Is that actually, is it going to hurt these guys in the long term? Do you think that's one of the reasons why these guys struggled at the trials? Just volume, just lack of time to kind of rest, recover, take a breather even throughout the season?
The taking a breather thing, the physiological piece is way beyond my pay grade, but what I think I am qualified and have insight on is just from having raced a little bit a long time ago, and also running a business for many years, is that notwithstanding that accepted principles for training elite middle distance runners may have adapted or changed to accommodate being close to your top shape all year, just the travel, and this from being international runner yourself, the travel, the preparation for races, the nerves, and just all of the effect on your whole person,
emotional toll,
to be on for all that year 06, when you had effectively no off season,
Yeah.
and you're an 800 guy too, perhaps too for the closer to the knife edge level you need to be for 800. Perhaps that is also more difficult than, say, distance guys who can just do threshold all year, like a Jakob or perhaps Hocker or those guys. Perhaps it's even more pernicious to be that close to the knife edge all year. Maybe that's what we're seeing. It's very hard, though, because if he hadn't botched it, we wouldn't be having this discussion. So maybe he just botched it, or maybe he, in that type of race, and it's a point we were going to talk about today, is running form. I have a theory, and Jason and I have chatted a little bit. This is running form and how you
Hoey, you're talking about Hoey, right?
Talking about Hoey.
Yeah.
Like how you move your body at the end of a big championship race. Is that a feature too? Because he's only a little bit off in terms of his performance.
Yeah.
It's not like he ran 146. Then I'd say definitely it's a conditioning thing. But what did he run? 142 flat about a month before the trials? I mean,
yeah, I know, but unfortunately, that 142 flat was a month before the trials and not at the trials. And I'm not. This is not a massive criticism. I just
I know it's an interesting discussion.
Yeah, I just look at
the question is what did he, if he'd started to go flat from say 6 weeks ago or 2 months ago, and this is I would say it would be more cogent evidence that he's got it all wrong, but it still is an outlier. Unfortunately for him, it is the biggest stage. That could be a stage fright thing too, where he's been, his camp will be building up. Apparently his father's very involved. You said built a track for him and all, so a lot of pressure too. And it's like, this is your it moment. You're going to make the US team when and then he's going, shit, that moment of doubt. It's like when you're playing your mate on the golf course and you're finally going to beat him and you've got like that knee knocking 3-footer and it slightly curls off to the left and you're going, no, if I miss this, my last 4 hours of efforts has been undone.
Yeah. I definitely feel in the case of Nagoose, I feel like he's not running on empty yet, but I feel like the battery is just a bit low. And I said this to a few people recently, a couple of other people I trust, that it's just, I feel like, man, it's what you said about the emotional toll, like of just, I mean, he had a pretty good indoor campaign, even though it was short, but straight into Grand Slam track. And those were all really good races, right? Like he's running against the podium, basically. He's running against the podium from Paris over 1,500 meters. Arop, obviously on the podium in the 800. He had Wanyoni there for a race, the Olympic champion over 800. Like all these races are really hard. And I just look at like, people say, yeah, but it's plenty of time to recover from sort of the indoor season through to now. There should be no excuse. But I'm like, man, what time was there to recover? Like, I don't think that guy probably had a training block away from a race for probably the longest he had away was like 3 weeks. And I just think that, eventually that catches up on you. It doesn't matter how good you are. And I think that like the training philosophy's kind of sort of playing into this at the moment. I don't know how good that is for some of these guys. It's going to be interesting over the next 3 to 4 years to see how a lot of these guys handle that.
Let's not forget that last year was Olympic year, and those guys, those top milers, raced a lot for top milers after the Olympics. They raced a handful of times.
Yeah.
It's also not forget that historically some of the big stars and Olympic champions have a natural pause, so to speak, in a post-Olympic year where they're a bit down. Yeah. I know our own Nick Willis had often, had a few injuries. That your personal theory has helped him prolong his career by not being bashed up all the time.
Yeah.
Jakob now being injured in terms of the long run, given he's going more towards the distances and his fuel, so to speak, to run fast 1,500 times is more threshold anyway. That may not be a bad thing. So, they had a big year last year, these guys, and then they're bashing it from February. Same thing happened to one of our favourite runners from the past, Craig Mottram. I remember us talking about it and going, man, he races a lot. Yeah, okay, maybe he's just Superman. And all of a sudden he was just gone, wasn't he? Because he'd be racing like real fast in Aussie in January, February. And all year he would race, and boom. And Craig Mottram should, as a aerobic guy, aerobic monster, he should have had like maybe not as a career as long as Willis, because that's a personal choice to have a career that long, but Craig Mottram should have had a very long, fruitful career. Instead, he had an amazing career, but it was very compact, its time frame. So, yeah, it's interesting. They have raced a lot. I agree with what you're saying. They've raced, and now perhaps we're starting to see some of the fallout of that across the board.
Yeah, and I think, like, again, just touching on that before we can move on to our guy Jakob and his current predicament, because I think it's all intertwined. It's just like, once again, I think that maybe there's a slight misconception that because the guys are just not doing as much, raw speed work as they have done in the past. Again, the concept of periodization amongst elite training it's not that the guys don't have like a base, phase or a build-up phase or a long rep phase and a dedicated speed work phase. It's just that kind of like the gaps between that, whereas in the past they were very distinct, right? Like I said earlier, you would go away for 3 or 4 months and not even think about wearing a pair of spikes or touching an athletic track, right? Like, you really weren't in great shape to race for, if you took a season as being, say, 10 months, right? Or like your training year being 10 months, you probably weren't really in great shape to race for at least, 75% of that, right? Whereas now, like with this philosophy shift towards this more threshold-based training where nobody is really flogging themselves in a workout doing this hardcore anaerobic capacity power work, right? Everything is about your threshold, right? And I think, in a way, is it possible that just by doing that, it's sort of, like maybe that real dedicated fast speed work of the past actually, in a way, was like a check and balance to stop you from like kind of like over racing, because and now kind of like it's given a little bit more of a green light where the guys are like, hey, I'm in shape to basically go out there any time of the year and run an awesome time, run 3:46 for the mile, run 1:43 for 800, 7:20, low 7:20s for 3K. And who knows, maybe that's just going to catch up, because like you said, and great example with Mottram, at the end of the day, we're not superhuman, and everybody, is going to have a little bit of a down period of time. You've only got so many races and so much gas in the tank,
Look at Cole Hocker, Olympic champion, 327.6, arguably the greatest 1500, certainly championship race, but arguably the greatest 1500 ever. And he ran 7:23 in February or whatever. He's been racing Grand Slam track. He's raced all year. I mean, really speaking, should we not be more shocked that Jonah Koech and Ethan Strand, who are very good runners, beat the Olympic champion in the US trials, the centerpiece race of their domestic summer?
Yeah.
I mean, is that a result of him being perhaps more blunted than he would have been without that year he's had? Possibly. It could also be because he's not yet too sharp, the way they train now, and based off the 5K, there's a possibility he's going to be great again at the World Champs, but you just don't know. It could be one or the other, or a bit of both. But yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying. That's how it looks anyway. Yeah,
and I think with Hocker, I think the one thing, maybe a difference between him and Nagoose is like, well, first of all, neither of them have raced as much at a high level as Josh Hoey has. But I think the thing with versus Nagoose is like, I think Hocker was quite open about Grand Slam track, saying, I really don't care that much to be in top shape for this. I'm going to kind of train through it. And I know when he made that comment that sort of ruffled a few feathers there. But I mean, that's just what you have to do. I mean, and look, it's kind of paying off for him a little bit now. Again, a real telling thing for me is like, I felt that both Hocker and Nagoose in the US 1500 had some leeway to kind of not be 100% on their game and still make the team. That wasn't the case for Yared. It was the case for Hocker, right? And I mean, I think that should lead us nicely into probably last topic for today, right? Huge news last couple of days, last 36, 48 hours. Ingebrigtsen, we are not going to see him in the Diamond League this year. Interestingly, he was announced for Brussels by the meet 2 days ago, and then literally 24 hours later, it's come out that I think reported by Studious magazine that he's not going to be running, still has issues with the injury. Deo, what's your takeaway from this? Is this really serious? Do you still expect to see him at Worlds in Tokyo?
I mean, he did come out and run with no previous races last year, the Prefontaine Classic, and ran 3:45 and just about won. What normal rules or assumptions don't apply to this guy? Who knows what? He's a freak. Who knows? I mean, he's run 7:17 for 3K. I won the Olympics 1500 when he was 20. Yeah. I don't know. I just don't know. You would by an ordinary assumption, if you had to guess one way or the other, you'd guess either he's not going to turn up or he's not going to be great. But normal assumptions don't apply to this guy. So
yeah,
who knows?
I think the 3:45 point is a good one, right? Like he had that injury concern at the start of 24 and then still came out and did that. I think the only difference is that injury was maybe 2 months long, right? So I guess just by a general kind of, I guess just general takeaway from that is that maybe it's certainly not as serious as this one, which is now bordering on 6 months of trouble. So I think it's fair to kind of assume that this one is considerably more serious. He is a guy that loves to race. I'm sure it's kind of killing him that he can't get out there and run. So that would lead me to believe that it's probably a bit more serious than maybe. I think it's weird, right? Because at first it was like, hey, he's, is he going to run Prefontaine? Is he not? Then it was like, no, he's not going to run Prefontaine because he's going to save it for this big clash with Kerr in London. Then that didn't happen. Then it was, no, he's going to come out in Silesia. And then there was even some crazy chatter around, hey, he's going to come out. He's just sort of fully prepping for this. He might go for the world record there. Apparently now that's off the table. Then he's announced at Brussels. And then a day later, he's like, no, I'm not running there. I think for me, again, it's just like you link this back into, again, training philosophy, being ready all year round. Clearly he was. He ran 3:45 flat for the mile back in February. And, again, these guys just with the new way that things are done, they seem to always be in shape. Yeah. I'm just not sure if we're going to see him in Tokyo. And I think if we do, I don't think we're going to see him in the 1500 because I think that would just be crazy to come into those championships without even one race and go and say, I'm going to try and run 5 world-class races with the level.
He is the sort of guy to try it, though. I don't think he's too worried about optics. The fact he ran that half marathon after the Olympics and blew up, and said, oh, that was hard, kind of thing. Like, I think that's the kind of John Walker have spikes will race type of attitude. A lot of people don't know that Walker lost a lot of races because he was this thing that Ivan Agnew read about him is that whole sort of mystique around him as unbeatable, which some of the media like to trumpet, was actually completely untrue. He'd go on big, long tours of Europe and lose quite a lot of races, but he was always there and thereabouts, pushing these guys. And Jakob's got a bit of the old Walker mongrel in him when he's not scared to take all comers on, and he'll just consistently race in a way that he really loves the sport and loves getting out there and being a competitor, which I think has been an awesome thing for the sport because we saw all those top guys racing each other after the Olympics last year. Whereas in yesteryear, some of these champions, when they'd Algarouge types and Morsley, and they'd lose and then sort of take a sad, disappear and get ready for the next year because they couldn't handle losing. Whereas he's not like that. So who knows? It would be really exciting if you saw him on that start line in the 1500.
Yeah. Yeah, again, I don't know. I'm trying to keep my positivity cap on here, but I just had this feeling that a lot of things are catching up with him. Maybe the training philosophy, this double threshold stuff. It is a big tax on your body all year round, and I think there's also I know I keep harking on about it, but this training stuff, it's like there's a bit of a misconception that just because you're not doing as much hardcore speed work anymore that it's not as taxing on your body. But what you are substituting with that is a lot more volume at kind of speeds, which are still really fast, right? Like, for him, his anaerobic threshold pace is probably around, he's working at perfecting 55.5 to 56 flat pace over 1500, and then to get that real training effect, you have to do quite a lot of volume at that level, and it's the same over 5K, particularly if he's more transitioning to wanting to look at the world record there. He's going to be doing a lot of work at essentially 60.5 pace and a ton of volume, and at some point that does just catch up with your body. So if that's in play, I don't know, but it's a bummer for the Diamond League. It's a bummer for fans of middle distance running and track in general, and hopefully we'll see him in Tokyo.
Very good.
Cool.
That's a wrap.
Awesome. Well, I thought that went pretty well. As we said, like, this is the first one that we're actually going to release out to the general public to get a bit of feedback. So love to hear everyone's thoughts.
First A-side.
First A-side. Plans for the rest of the weekend, Darryl? What's up?
I've got a sports card show in Auckland this morning down at the down at the Green Lane Convention Centre. So I'm going to go and try and find a few LeBron James rookie cards.
Nice.
Wonder if there'll be any track cards. I know they released a few years ago. I don't think they're worth it very much, but we are and always will be a minority sport. Maybe a Ben Johnson card or a Mary Dekaslaney. Or maybe a Carl Lewis when he came to the Robin Tate Classic on our North Shore in, was it 98, with this when he had the headband on and the big yellow leotard. That was a fond memory of my childhood. That was pretty cool seeing Carl Lewis in the flesh. Yep, and Donovan Bailey a year later. Donovan Bailey. Yeah, that was awesome. World's second fastest man. Yeah. Any golf plans? No, none. I'm still in the shed trying to turn that hoof. It's not easy. What about yourself, mate? What are you doing? I'm not sure. Oh, actually, we're going to visit the wife's parents over on the East Coast. So a bit of an Italian week coming up. Mum is home cooking, which I always like. So we'll deal with some of the dramas there. But I played yesterday. Just mixed bag. Some good swings, some bad swings. It's just never ending story. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll leave you to it, mate. I'll let you get ready for the card expo and all the best there. Hopefully something good comes out, and we'll do this again in a week's time. I'm sure there'll be something awesome to talk about. Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me on. All right. Awesome. Cheers, pal.